like it sounds technologically fraught. Okay.
It definitely has some challenges, and I've had a couple of people I've had to reach out to like to ask them questions. So here we are. Okay. It definitely has some challenges, and I've had a couple of people. Okay, I want to mute this on my end. Okay, and can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great. What I'm trying to figure out is how to make all four of us show up.
Sure.
I mean, I can see everyone.
Can you? Okay. I'm seeing everyone pop up per. Okay. I'm seeing you guys each pop up. Okay.
Yeah, so it looks like we'll each pop up individually whenever we're speaking.
Oh, there we go. That's what I wanted. There we go. That's what I was hoping for. Okay. All right. So welcome everyone who is joining us. We are going to jump in here pretty quickly to read you guys poetry from some of our favorite poets as well as our own. We have Zach, who is in Tallahassee, and Nathan, who is in Brisbane. Sydney, what city are you in?
I'm
Brisbane.
in Atlanta.
Sorry.
Atlanta. You are in Atlanta? You're in Brisbane. Okay, sorry.
I got back last week.
And I am in Kuala Lumpur. So we are coming from 4 different places around the world, and we're really excited to be able to share with you guys. I'm going to hand it off to Zach to start us today. And we're just gonna read to you guys and recite to you guys for the next hour and take turns. And so let's take it away.
Cool, thank you, Ash. So how do we want to do this? Do you want us to do like a poem a piece or read our portion?
Yeah, that's fine. I think I'd just pick whether it's your own or someone else's, and then just of course let us know, and then read out what you have, and we'll just kind of take turns going around, or as you feel you want to like step in and read. And then for the audience, in the description box below, you'll find a link to each of our work that we are doing, and you can support that. Or if you guys want to donate to us, we're all freelance writers, students, and so, you know, COVID-19 certainly has an effect on us too. And so you're welcome to donate at the PayPal link below, and it will help support us and hopefully be able to do more of these things. But yeah, I would say let's just go around and just start reading or reciting as you feel led to.
Cool. All right. So a poem a piece then. I'll start us off with one of my own. This one is called Fingers on a Gay Man. It was published in the February issue of Poetry. So if you need a link, you can just go to the Poetry Foundation website and you can follow along. All right, so this is Fingers on a Gay Man. A pair of adolescent boys grabs a rabbit to shear off its ears. It doesn't matter why, whether they're sad or from the city. What matters is what they do with their hands. Hold the blade, hang the rabbit by its ears. But the rabbit says, I met a truck stop priest in Mississippi outside Books-A-Million. Should I tell you what he said? And the boys pause to consider, so he continues. We sat into the night talking about anything. His gay ex-wife who practices witchcraft, masturbation with vacuum hoses, his fetish for boys' leg hairs like your own. They giggle at this and scream, set the rabbit down and listen. The priest in his collar and cross necklace spoke, though his face transformed. He grew freckles where there weren't any freckles. He grew beards where his chin was smooth, and his eyes were more ancient than all the lakes in Mississippi. What did he say? What did he say? The boys demand, wanting to learn more than anything. Continues the rabbit. The faces spoke, not the priest. and voices that traveled to my brain. They taught me lessons. First, that every soul is a thread in a cloth that floats through black everything, sparkling like snow into a lake. So you and I and everyone we know are iterations of these souls, these cloths, some newly woven and some old. The boys. What else did the faces say? The rabbit. They said that they and I were of a single cloth, of the type who dies and rises again. And what about us? What about us? Demand the boys. And the rabbit jumps off the rock and runs because the boys hold a knife and can't recognize a parable or my face, however human.
Amazing.
Nice.
Yeah,
Can I be
thank you.
clicking for that? Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, so who's next?
Nathan, Sydney?
Sydney. It's that's going what, anti-clockwise for me.
Okay, I can go next.
Yeah.
I'll start with one of my own as well. This is called Cyborg. It was published in an online magazine called Orris Root about 1.5 years ago. My body is not robotic. I do not speak with a metal twang. My mouth does not open and shut on the command of a program created by a genius who formed me into myself. I am born of the earth. I am born of a hospital in Ohio too early, covered in purple paste. When I look at myself as a newborn, I only see death and restricted breathing and the worry lines on my mother's face because she is too young and my father wants to hold me, but the doctors must check my vitals to make sure that I will not face death. Wires sprout from my limbs like roots and tie me to this world. They attach to my mother too, and we wait in the muted glow of street lamps for someone to cut us loose from each other in the hospital room. A machine displays her heart rate, beeping in pattern, assuring the doctors that everything is all right. I am 5. My mother places me in the bathroom with the shower on hot and tells me to breathe slowly, but I can hardly breathe at all, and I do not understand her directions. The air suffocates me, though I know that this is not her intention. I wait for her, for somebody to release me. The steam covers me, my glasses, and the mirror, but slowly I feel the air enter my lungs again. I will not have to go to the hospital to be hooked up to wires and have a mask over my face that pushes medicine into my lungs. I hate wearing the mask, which is connected to a machine which dispenses medicine into my airways to clear them out. She knocks on the door and comes in without asking. She has her stethoscope with her and listens to my breathing. She turns off the water and pulls me by my wrist to the kitchen table where she has set up the machine. The breathing machine, because I cannot breathe on my own, because my body does not work properly, because I need to take steroids that put me at risk for brittle bones and easy fractures. I take the mask from her hands and place it over my face. The machine turns on with a loud whirring noise, and I can't hear anything, so I just sit there, holding a book close to my eyes because I had to take off my glasses, and now I cannot see. But I can breathe.
Wow. It's a story. That's one of the things I love about poetry is that it's storytelling. It's incredible storytelling. You know? Nathan?
Okay, so I'll read 2 of the short ones. So yeah, this one's called Subsiding is Bliss. It is about when I first moved to Cambodia. I don't think I'd ever seen a dead body before, and then I saw a guy who'd been killed on the road. So yeah, it's about that. Subsiding is bliss. On the road, a fresh corpse beneath shades of neon. Everything in its right place. Everything. Palms down, quiet as a monk, skin creased with events. A halo of blood reflects blades of light from diesel-powered pavers encircling, spluttering in. And this one is a collection of last utterances from news reports in 2012. It's just called news. Oh, hang on. It's saying the internet connection is unstable. Are we good?
Yeah, I can hear you. There's a small lag, but I can hear you.
All right. Oh, also, this one is available in my collection called I Take Nothing Strong, Only Lightning, which is worth owning, if only for the amazing cover art by the guy who was the lead from And You Will Know Us by the Trail of the Dead. Don't know if you guys know that band, but they're good. Anyway, BBC News. Later that morning, 161 sites, it's believed between 500 and 600 jobs will be lost. Police claim there was a culture of illegal payments at the Sun, will be made redundant, with a frying pan to make a noise for women on air. Been in place in the mine before the accident, Jeremy Paxman. During a row about the relaxation of some border controls, also found that Peugeot and Renault lost their value the fastest, without pay for the military personnel. Had a positive effect on the figures that had led to allegations of price fixing, 1 million, Jockey's Fund. Described the killings as beyond understanding and filled her with sorrow and shame. Up to 8 tests in the previous record low, 2007. Overthrow President Assad. Paid through services companies instead of paying. Straightforward income tax center who phoned up pretending to be the Queen. Health problems. Children and teachers at a primary school last month. Complicated by the drug's toxic effects. Thanks.
It's definitely interesting to see like how the modern world is changing sort of the poetry in the space. You know, like you're bringing up like current events and these things that in a way we're, especially as journalists, we're sort of attached to but detached from because of the job that we do.
Yeah, I just like taking something completely on that's supposed to have zero artifice and then into something like aesthetic, you know. I think process is quite, I found it rewarding.
I love that. Okay, well, I guess it's my turn. So I'll do an original since everyone's starting out with an original. This one I call Anecdote. Erotic as an anecdote to death, she said, nearly exasperated, understanding the depths. It's the erotic taking us all a little higher and higher, and it's the touch of skin, giving us all within. It is aliveness we crave. It is the expanded, expounded saturation of infatuation, offering us meaning, breathless life force, and a sense of rebirth each time we release. Drenched in sweat, tears slip down at the very sound of an exhaled moment, in between the sheets, out in the cool air, in the winter's breeze, high and above the earth, immersed in the sea. There, it's then we see, it is then our being shedding and bleeding, the very lesions we ignore. And so the erotic becomes plagued with the weight of wound, crying out for the weight of glory to be revealed by the one we have become one with one. To live and move and have our very own being in the grieving, shifting from what went wrong to what was left empty. Oh, darling, where have you kept me? So when we restore connection, can we find the erotic a gate and the way to the soul and back in a unified resurrection, electrified, radical reason to exist? You see, it's all connected, all a temple. Tear it down, build it up, move on up to the knowing, to the understanding of divine mercy. So I long for you to see me, to feel my depths, to know the shudder of my soul, the explosion of my mind, as my breath shakes when I laugh at the power of our connection, commanded together in a room, navigating so soon the rulership of our own. Medicine woman and high priestess we are these, what we be in the space together, the spiritual and the sensual. No, it's the tantric erotic currents running through. It's eclectic movement of our bodies in the earth and the rumbling which grew, rose from the ashes. Sorry. rose from the ashes and out of the flames to meet you, joined with your stardust emerging the same, from black holes of the universe, spitting stars onto the blackened sky. And it is here, darling, it is here that I found our souls meshed as one, in spirit and truth reflected in your half moon and iris blue. The shadows cease, and we are welcomed back into the fold, the life force and breathless tender, molded acknowledgement of our radiating glow, higher and calmer, away from the rush of desperation, of exasperation, racing against our very death, but receiving the very divine breath of the life we create. A new creation, a new reconciliation in relation to who we are and what we know. Enough was enough is enough. The raging derelict stuff we've left behind. This, my love, is the erotic inside and out. It's all connected. To know the sign from above and below as within and without, reaching ecstasy in the aliveness of rejuvenation. The erotic rises from a blend of a holy whispered embrace in the place where we sit and fit once again. Sorry, I lost my place in the middle of it. I actually wrote that after listening to a podcast with a woman by Esther Perel, who I follow, who is a sort of renowned relationship therapist. And
have you read her book? Because I'm thinking of reading it.
Mating in Captivity is amazing.
That's the one I should read it, huh?
That was her first book, but she's an incredible sort of therapist and focusing on the human condition and relationships. But I heard her talk about eroticism being sort of this anecdote to death, and that eroticism isn't always just about sex, it's about aliveness. And so what makes us come alive? And so anyway, this was kind of birthed from that place, and then of course from very personal places that I had been. So yeah.
Cool.
All right, Zach, it's back to you.
Personal. All right, so this next one is also from places I have been. It is called, I'm reading out of the same issue as the last one. This poem, oh, my connection is unstable. Am I unstable? You can't answer that. Is my connection unstable to you? Okay.
No.
All right, so this one is for Baron B. On the blacktop, along the track, against the gym's bricks, somewhere, you said, I teased you in middle school. Somewhere, relentlessly, you said. Are you gay yet? You were seated in a circle I'd run in who used strange language, brown, white, blow, bars, bud, 8-ball, triple C's, a sophomore. I'm not fucking gay, Zach. Dre gave you an out, keeping you in the closet. Yeah, we did it. Okay. Then you admitted it. We were in your parents' kitchen with so much plastic stacked in that fetid sink and apple cores, cheese, camel filters floating in the Tupperware. Don't smoke inside, you said. I really hate it when she smokes inside. Your father, in his dent in a yellow cushioned couch, collected unemployment, shook his head, faggots through browning teeth. He had a habit with watches, collected secondhands, spun gears into and out of place. I blew my smoke out the window in your bare bedroom. You taught me to cut my own hair with a Bic razor by pressing my thumb against the blade at the nape of your neck. The less pressure, the more texture you get. Thanks for taking pictures of me on the playground. Costume earrings, knockoff Swarovski, a faded turtleneck cut across the chest, my adolescent armpit hair exposed as I hung off the monkey bars. You smeared the lipstick across my face. I kept my eyeliner straight. Our hair was magnificent, Baron. Thick, dry, unruly curls. Thank you for offering me the needle, even though I turned you down. You called me the only man who could take heroin or leave it. Mainly, you took it in the back seat of my Blazer, making your fix. We kissed for the first and only time at the red light. I just want you to feel good. I didn't. Your name is written in thin circular stains at the base of every spoon I eat from. You come back to me in stages. I don't know who you are. Even the playground only looks like you at night when nearby sirens bore and skinny dogs get kicked in the ribs. We could make it so you don't feel like the inside of a cheek ground into sidewalks barren. There are so many clean walls where I live now. I've got computers. You could use them.
Awesome. So awesome. No, I love that. It was really raw, right? And I think that like, so my first poetry book is called Raw, Naked, and Laid Bare, because I think that honestly, like that's what we express through our poetics, is sort of the rawness of everything that we are or that we've experienced. So I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. Nathan or Sydney?
You want to go, Sydney?
Sure, I can go ahead. This is a poem I wrote after driving through South Dakota last week. It's called Counting Tumbleweed. 3 hours, maybe 5, since the last time I stopped. The time itself had stopped, meaningless among the brown grasses and distant nothing on I-90 in eastern South Dakota. Am I there yet? No, less than halfway to my destination on the other side of the country, where at least there were people and places and things. On the phone, when I had service, I played a game. I'm counting tumbleweed, I said, and they asked me, why are you counting it? And I answered, because I have nothing else to do. 1, 2, maybe 3 if I squint my eyes into the distance, but everything becomes each other through my streaked windshield, and I wonder, 4, 5, 6, 7, why is there so much tumbleweed, they asked. And I didn't know the answer other than I was in South Dakota, and in South Dakota there was tumbleweed. I drove through a land of mythos and unreality, the landscape only marked with vacated roadside attractions, and I wondered where the people are and if they understand South Dakota. 8, 9, 10, 11 miles ahead, a car slows because they see something, and maybe it's tumbleweed, but maybe it's a coyote or a person, but people don't live out here. And I remind myself of this as of the houses and towns I haven't seen as my gas tank creeps toward empty. So, thank you. It was the most stressful drive of my life because I would go 50, 60 miles and it'd just be nothing. My bike actually almost fell off the back of my car and I had to pull over, and the only place I could stop was at an abandoned fireworks store. There's like nothing for miles. And so then I had to get back on the road, and it was 30 miles until I could like be at a gas station, and it was just mind numbing for about an entire day. But
it's insane.
I mean, like for a British person, that sounds like kind of cool in a way, because we don't have like huge open, because your states are as big as the whole country a lot of the time, you know. So that's interesting to me, I suppose.
It is pretty cold up there right now. Like, is the temperature alleviating up in the north?
A little bit. When I left, it was both smoking and it was snowing, so I wasn't really sure what that was about, but that usually doesn't happen at the same time.
Yeah.
But it smelled like bonfire, so I think there was like a fire somewhere, but I couldn't figure out where. But yeah, it was still pretty cold. And then it's hot here. Obviously, I'm very sunburnt. I went on a walk today, did not wear sunscreen, so I haven't really acclimated back yet.
Relish it. Relish the coloring of the sun while you can.
Yeah.
All right, Nathan, you're up.
Okay, so this one is called Strays. So it's about a weekend I spent with my wife, but one of the first weekends we spent together. So we weren't married at that point. And it's set in Cambodia because that's where we were living. Anyway, it's called Strays. And it goes like this. Hang on, I think I might need to burp. No, we're good. Okay, we leave the wrath of development, circular saws spluttering, and those turrets of identity, becoming wild. Stretching, we downward dogs expose pink tongues to clearer air, our bellies flat against the riverbank, beneath a sky bruised with sunset. This is my favorite time of day, she sniffs. I poke my nose into her cheek, nuzzling the softest spot, and she picks ants out of my fur. Beneath our scamper, the bamboo bridge crackles. She stops, her fur showered with moonlight, her pupils dark as keyholes. I poke my nose into her cheek. She places a paw on mine. And I don't know, I feel like, can I read something that's a little bit more prosy?
Yeah, of course, anything.
It's just an extract from an essay that I just put up on the blog that I do. So it's about yoga, and just quickly, it's about practicing yoga outside. So in Australia, we are allowed outside, lucky us. And so I was practicing in a park, and I was kind of thinking, are people going to be thinking like, what's going to happen? Is this a good thing to do? Am I just showing off? I don't know. Anyway, so it's about that. So anyway, so I go to the park. I fortified myself, committed. If I was going to stand up with one leg behind my head and catch the attention of Aussies on their home turf and potentially blow the minds of passing children, then it had better be the best damn practice I ever did. Okay, I said to myself, pretend you're Sharat Joyce circa 1999. No showing off, just delicate hops, pure efficiency and concentration. Drishti would be essential if I was to be able to maintain focus and make it through. Afterwards, an old bodhisattva in sunglasses came up and asked me how long I'd been practicing. We sat on the grass and conversed. He spoke in an Irish accent and said meditation was just about letting go. He said you could see it in the wind and how each blade of glass fluttered. The vivifying air glowed with prana. We smiled, slipping into samadhi, talking about motorcycles. I only practice outside today because the builders were making such a racket, I said. You don't usually? The bodhisattva replied. I feel self-conscious. No, don't feel that, he said. If only one person sees you and gets inspired to practice, then it's worth it. I nodded, letting the permission to shine settle around my old coughing heart. So the next day I returned, did the practice again. People stopped and watched a while and then moved on. I wondered how it was easier to practice in public than at home. Was I just riding the high of exhibitionism? And it goes on. But that was the bit I wanted to share anyway.
That's fantastic. I love it.
Yes.
I mean, I think I said it before we started that I prose and rhyming poetry, to me, I think it's a matter of style, right? Prose is a style. I don't think that they're two separate things. I mean, they both embrace the poetic language is sort of moving through the words in a way that we might not normally talk about in like a regular setting. So I love it just as much.
I think like I kind of agree. I think I see it like a little bit differently in terms of the way you do prose. It's like it's very poetic, right? But then I think how I see it if I'm doing a prose thing is I tend to see it as like kind of flat, factual, but then it will like do a poetic flourish and then sort of like go back and then it will go up again and then back, right? So again, it's like a kind of style thing as well. But like, I don't know, I think for me, it's a little bit more compartmentalized. I'm not saying one's wrong. I'm just saying how I experience it. And I don't know. I wonder if any of the other guys have any thoughts on that. Like, Sydney, you do a bit of prose, right?
Repeat that, please, just so I can hear it again and make sure I'm answering.
I mean, like, how do you see prose and poetry merging? Like, where is there a kind of cutoff point, or do they completely flow over to one, or is there sort of different aspects?
I think I do see them fairly separately, though. It's funny. I have one of my closest friends. They're a poet. They're mostly write poetry, and when they read a lot of my writing, they say it sounds very prosy, which I think is funny. But I think it makes sense in that there's just like a different rhythm and a different style, and I think that I can sometimes get there when I'm writing like a personal essay, but it's almost something that I have to focus on. And I find myself when I'm writing poems, they're usually very short, and I want to be succinct and tight. And then a lot of my essays are very long. It's been a struggle with my thesis advisor, who's telling me these are all like 6,000, 7,000 words. It's going to be hard to find somewhere to publish them. But so yeah, I guess that would be my thought on it.
You know, I think that there's definitely, when it comes to poetics in general, I think that if, for example, a lot of the sort of the modern poetics, there's a group called Button Poetry, and they put out videos of a lot of, especially young poets, and it is very prose. Most of it is prose. And I think that it comes down to sort of the storytelling element. And there are going to be people who are going to have preferences. There are going to be people who are going to lean into one more than the other. But I think it's as you get into a rhythm of your writing, you kind of refine the style that you feel is comfortable for you. And it's sort of like, you know the rules, but you break the rules, because ultimately that's all of what poetics is just sort of breaking the rules of writing to sort of paint with what you're feeling, right? You know, the academic stuff is interesting, but I feel like it's only interesting to the point of just understanding its contextual observation. After that, it's all on you. It's all here, you know? Okay, so I'll go. This one is called In My Silence. This is one of my own. In my silence, there are utterances I cannot speak, for to create language would destroy their essence. There are longings for which I cannot confess. There are questions I dare not ask. And what I feel, the knowing in my soul, is firmly grounded as last I saw your face. So shed your disdain and unmask your cruelty, please. Know what I do and what I do not, what I say and what I say not, are all intertwined in a space of grappling with that knowing for which I cannot speak. And therefore understanding will be limited only to projection. Trust me when I say, I would if I could, I am flawed in every way, try as I might, I fumble, forgive me. And so perhaps if you find footing to trust again, I can show you in the pure space of quiet perfection, a dance, a levitation so divine, in presence of present company and energy, I invite you to come. Perhaps it cannot be today. Today I accept it as so. But in the wild afternoon on a warm summer's breath, when you inhale deeply, the breeze or the wind, you'll hear my voice calling sounds, lift up and edify the space of meditation and love, for it will draw close the redemptive place where we meet and can anoint the sacred of what began, of what was interrupted, all the things I cannot bear to utter in my quiet, silent room are held close to the chest and the soul and mind and can be brought forth, where I can ask you, so what do you think of that, my dear? On such a day, I believe, yes, I know you will say, now I have no fear. So let us walk a little further, graze a little more, discover the gracious encounter in a romantic outpour, and you share with me your unheard utterances. Too, I will say, I see you. May we illuminate for the ministry of these, so it is and shall be. Selah. That one's actually in my book, Raw, Naked, and Laid Bare.
Are you gonna do? You should do an audio book of that, but you should, because I think you read it very well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've thought about it. I've had a few people who have shared with me that I should do an audiobook of my poetry, so I might just do that.
Yeah, having read it, it's really, it's always cool to hear having something you've read, but having the person who wrote it, the writer, read it out loud and hear their emotion.
Oh my God, have y'all heard Toni Morrison read her books?
No,
I've heard her read her, I've heard her recite her poems and stuff, but I haven't heard her like an audiobook, a full audiobook. Is it amazing?
It's so good. I mean, like, it's one step away from actually meeting God to listen to Morrison.
Google this person, Toni Morrison. I've not heard of him or her. I don't know.
Yeah, she died not long ago, but she was an American. She's kind of considered an American.
The Bluest Eye. Is that the book?
She's one of the best prose writers of the last century. Very, very well awarded teacher. I believe she taught at Cornell, and she either died last year or the year before.
Mhm.
But I would recommend reading everything she wrote and listening to her Nobel Prize acceptance speech. It's so good.
Okay.
Well, you're up. Do you have a Toni Morrison one you want to read out?
I don't. I don't have a Tonyism to read, but I do have one of my own, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. And this is the last one I have of my own. And then if depending on time, I have a couple of other selections available on the web. We'll see how it goes. But this is one of a couple that came out last month, I believe last month. Where are we right now? What month is this?
We are in April.
The
Okay.
cruelest
The cruelest month that never ended. Yeah. Yeah, so this just came out last month. And it's a kind of longer one. For me, it's over 2 pages. So here we go. It's called Branches. Branches. And suddenly, expectedly, mothers started to reach their arms, fists to elbows, down their children's mouths and throats, into the sugar-laden lining of the stomach. Fathers did too. Husbands, their wives, their husbands' throats, sisters, their brothers, their mothers, and my brothers even reached into a man on the street with a paper crane. We'd been told we would find some new pleasure there. We had a notion the insides held answers to all our untenable questions. A teenager might go missing for days, so her mother would plunge down the tongues of the kid's friends. The missing girl's sister, alone in a bedroom, would choke on her own crackling elbows, grasping for what she might have forgotten. Each time an arm was pulled out of a mouth, it came coated. In short, once inside, the limb made a cast like a silicone mold of whatever it touched. Impressions like pink dishwashing gloves, cuts, and dinner drew out of the head like a yawn. The coating sloughed whole off the arm, intact, peeled off as a swim cap, thick as wax and wriggling with rubbery veins. People would squeeze off these casts and leave them indiscriminately anywhere. They called these the branch of an arm, for their likenesses to roots, to the trunks of young trees. Streets were littered with branches. In living rooms, people made shelves of the things. Having been asked through the stomach for answers, I myself grew a crop of unreachable questions. I phoned mother, told her I'd be coming home soon, then got a hold of her spleen and found nothing. I left her with those first little branches, dripping, inspected, and thrown on the eaves. I branched out to others, my sister, whose roof in Houston thatched casts of her husband's, her little boy's innards. Sequences of strangers whose bare naked knees ground my rug to its stitches, who entered through any obtainable hole, dropped into me for answers and left empty-handed, the veins of their fingers and the cracks of my grin. I reached out to the preacher, but found only wafers and prison-grade beef. I littered the drippings of politicians and recycled a stack of historians' suppers. Of late, I've been thinking around the question of my sensitive lover's insides. I haven't reached often, though I wouldn't say never. His fifth and sixth kidneys are swinging on cords over the sink to dry. I reached deep, but not lately or again. We could make us a pact to prevent reaching, could stitch half our fingers together, could start fresh from so nice to meet you. See my lips, how they part like a seed? Listen, as I ask him to balance his fingers on the buds at the tip of my tongue. Watch how I trust the gap in his teeth without seeing whether my fist might fit through them. We could stop at the space at the edge of a lip with a trace of our fathers stitched into our hides, intestines and circles that coil around our feet with the sleeves of their innards as punctuation for our pores, their hair and the thick of our skin. We could listen.
Brilliant. I think go ahead.
I was just saying that's what I've got in mind. Those are the three that I brought from me.
I think
Funny.
that's brilliant. Yeah. I love that you're putting your heart out there, and I appreciate the vulnerability, because that's what poetry is. It's vulnerability. Who's next?
I can go. I have a section of one of my essays, my master's thesis. It's from an essay called $1 Million Mistake, which mostly talks about the TV show Survivor, but this part doesn't. And I wanted to read it because I want to read Sylvia Plath's Elm later, and this section follows that poem. The first time I feared my own burning, I had been practicing my memorization of Sylvia Plath's Elm on the staircase at my parents' house. This was about a year before I burned the journals, and I still had a stroke of innocence about me, thinking that I was still a believer because I strictly adhered to rules and guidelines I set for my own perfection. I don't remember why I chose Elm, other than I liked Sylvia Plath and the poem fit the length requirement my professor had set. I flipped through my copy of Ariel that I had received for Christmas and tried to find something that would work. My voice boomed from the landing. I was the only one home, so I took liberty in being loud and expressive, holding the book in my hand as I walked up and down the stairs, paced back and forth along the landing. I made sure to be careful in my articulation, in the rhythm of the words on the page. I have suffered the atrocity of sunsets, scorched to the root. My red filaments burn and stand, a hand of wires. My throat closed and I began to choke, tears running down my face, coughs turning into sobs, body collapsed on the floor, Plath's writing wrapping me tight as I cried and cried. I don't want to go to hell, I whispered to myself. I heaved and then screamed as if I had been set on fire in that moment, as if I had channeled Plath herself and felt what she felt as she took her final breaths and then descended into the depths. I took a few deep breaths and stood up, wanting to continue on with the recitation, but beat down once again by the death dripping from the poem because it forced me to consider dying in that moment and knowing in my heart I would not enter the kingdom of heaven. In my attempts to escape hell, I became a Pharisee, acting the part of a pious Christian with my rituals and leading of Bible studies, all the while afraid to speak the name of Jesus because I knew it would expose me as a fraud. My drive to be successful and praised kept me involved, and I felt proud of my ability to fake my relationship with Jesus so well that no one saw through me. That is, until I moved out of my non-religious parents' house, left my church after a sermon I disagreed with, and decided to live with Baptists to strengthen my relationship with Christ. They knew I was faking. There's a story in the Old Testament that I've always liked because it's just one of those tales meant to expose a great truth about life, but upon rereads comes across as made up. In the book of David, King Nebuchadnezzar asked all of his people to bow down to a golden statue, but 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to obey the king's orders, saying that they only serve one God, and that God has no other idols before him. Understandably, the king is angry and orders that the 3 men be thrown into a fiery furnace set 7 times hotter than normal. The story goes on to say that the furnace was so hot that the guards who carried out the punishment died from the heat. The 3 men, however, not only survived, but were comforted by the presence of a 4th man who walked with them in the furnace and had the face of God. When I was taught this story in Sunday school, the teachers always reminded me to defend my faith, even if I would face fatal punishment. My dedication to his greatness should always outweigh my fear of death. The messaging always seemed urgent, too, as if I would be constantly defending my faith to people I met, in the same way Survivor castaways must constantly prove their worth to be not voted out of the game. I think that if I were ever on Survivor, that I'd probably do fairly well, since it appears I'll be on fire for eternity anyway. If my torch never goes out, I can't lose. Some of my journals pondered these questions, past me wondering why anyone needed to be damned to hell, if anyone was truly that bad. I often thought that I must have been that bad, if not for the shed blood of Jesus Christ. My soul, too, deserved unmitigated torture. Unlike the 3 men, though, God would never come to save me from my punishment. Since Jesus does not reside in my heart now, it means that he must have never been there. He must have never sent the Holy Spirit to guide me on my journey of life. If all of this is true, it means I was never really a Christ believer in the first place, and I had been predestined for hell since the beginning of time. If I knew I was destined to fail, maybe I never would have decided to play.
Yeah, nice. That's an Christian, I relate to that. Now a happy Buddhist, so there. I think just
Yeah.
a thing that happened.
A lot of my thesis is about kind of leaving Christianity, like what that meant to me.
Oh, I'd like to read it.
I think, yeah, I'll have to share it with y'all.
Of you connecting that the Dark Night of the Soul to a game of Survivor. That's so fun. That is so fun.
Thank you. I gave it to my advisor and I was like, he's not gonna think this is gonna work. Like the whole essay has this TV show in it, and then but he was like, I'm surprised it works. And I was like, yes.
But you know, like that reminds me of something about that where, okay, so the Dark Night of the Soul is like a kind of, let's say it can be construed as a shamanic journey, right? To find the self, yeah. And then like, I read this, I think it's been an anthropologist's thesis or something, analyzing, and in this sense, it was that reality show, The Apprentice, but the British Apprentice without Trump, which was way classier, and they analyzed that as like a shamanic journey, yeah. So it's actually archetypally a reality show could be construed as a type of shamanic journey, kind of like a Dark Night of the Soul for the characters. So I don't know, archetypally it kind of works perhaps.
In a weird way, your argument just connected Trump with Jesus Christ.
I think one of the
Yeah.
interesting elements is that Western Christianity has damaged so many people. You know, and all four of us come from traditions where we experience the elements of those damages, and have had to emerge into our sort of own self-acceptance and understand the stories of holy things, right? Of holy messengers, and that have spurred us into that self-acceptance, but none of it aligns with what we were taught, because what we were taught was given a very rigid interpretation that ultimately is incredibly damaging. And I think that emergence is something that I actually see in a lot of poetry and a lot of prose. I mean, if you look at almost any major poet that we love and that we adore, they came from the most dire circumstances, and a lot of times it was because of a societal or religious expectation that was put on them in the first place, whether it came from race, class, sexuality, you know, the way that you practice a faith or whatever. And I think that ends up becoming plays a really vital role in sort of the depth of the expressiveness of what we do. So well done, Sydney. I love it.
Christian tradition has inspired a lot of just millions of poems. I mean,
well, Christianity itself has amazing poetry within it. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Song of Songs is actually one of my favorite poems. Yeah.
It's very sexy and dirty. Like most people don't realize that the Song of Songs is really dirty.
Oh yeah, as a Sunday school kid, like I knew all the dirty bits in the Bible. Like I could like just go something like that. I don't think I could do it now though.
I just think that interpretation sort of slandered it, right? Like the Bible actually has incredibly beautiful poetry in it. That's raw and human, and the human experience of divine and other people and love and hatred and anger and all of the things that we feel. But the problem is it gets diluted because interpretation, the Western interpretation in particular, is very rigid and it wants to take it so literally. And so I think what's happened is when you kind of get back to the beautiful language of it, you begin to realize these guys were just as human as we were.
Yeah,
we are.
Yeah, and they were scared of sex as well, so that was a bit of a problem.
All right, so is it
yeah, since we're talking about religion, I'm going to the poems I picked are my favorite ones, and they are basically Buddhist in nature. And so this is probably one of my favorite ones. I don't know if you guys know it. It's called Bugs in a Bowl by David Wolfe Budbill. So Bugs in a Bowl. Han Shan, that great and crazy, wonder-filled Chinese poet of 1,000 years ago, said, "We're just bugs in a bowl, all day going around, never leaving the bowl." I said, Right. Every day climbing up the steep sides, sliding back, over and over again, round and around, up and back down. Sit in the bottom of the bowl, head in your hands, cry, moan, feel sorry for yourself, or look around, see your fellow bugs, walk around, say, hey, how you doing? Say, nice bowl. And the next one I like, where's it gone? Okay, so this is by Joanne Kiger. It's called Notes from the Revolution. During the beat of this story, you may find other beats. I mean a beat. I mean cantus. I mean firm us. I mean paper. I mean in the kingdom which is coming, which is here in discovery. It is also Om Shri Maitreya. You don't go across my vibes, but with them, losing the pronoun. It is thy, it is thee, it is I, it is me. Machines are metal, they serve us, we take care of them. This is to me, and this is to you. You say you to me, and I say you to you. Some machines are very delicate. They are precise. They are not big metal stampers. She made enough poetry to keep her company. Vibes. You intercepted my the long shows, the long shadows, the long shadows. My sweet little tone is my arm. On what only? The song that girl sang, the song that girl sang. So there's a couple of Buddhist influenced Western poems.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a good one. I nearly had that tattooed on my arm. My sweet little tone is my arm. I still might actually. I think it's a good idea.
Be amazing. Just your your
Yeah.
daily reminder. Just your
Yeah.
daily reminder of all of that. I was going to jump in. I was going to read one by Khalil Gibran, who I love and we all love, but it's kind of a prose that he wrote called Freedom. And an orator said, "Speak to us of freedom." And he answered, "At the city gate and by your fireside, I have seen you prostrate yourself and worship your own freedom. Even as slaves humble themselves before a tyrant and praise him, though he slays them. Aye, in the grove of a temple and in the shadow of the citadel, I have seen the freest among you wear their freedom as a yoke and as a handcuff. And my heart bled within me, for you can only be free when even the desire of seeking freedom becomes a harness to you, and when you cease to speak of freedom as a goal and a fulfillment. You shall be free indeed when your days are not without a care, nor your nights without a want and a grief, but rather when these things girdle your life and yet you rise above them naked and unbound. And how shall you rise beyond your days and nights unless you break the chains which you, at the dawn of your understanding, have fastened around your noon hour? In truth, that which you call freedom is the strongest of these chains, though its links glitter in the sun and dazzle the eyes. And what is it but fragments of your own self you would discard that you may become free? If it is an unjust law, you would abolish that law. That law was written with your own hand upon your own forehead. You cannot erase it by burning your law books, nor by washing the foreheads of your judges, though you pour the sea upon them. And if the despot you would dethrone, see first that his throne erected within you is destroyed. For how can a tyrant rule the free and the proud? For a tyranny in their own freedom and a shame in their one pride. And if it is a care you would cast off, that care has been chosen by you rather than imposed upon you. And if it is fear you would dispel, the seat of that fear is in your heart and not in the hand of the feared. Verily, all things move within your being in constant half embrace, the desired and the dreaded, the repugnant and the cherished, the pursued and that which you would escape. These things move within you as lights and shadows in pairs that cling. And when the shadow fades and is no more, the light that lingers becomes a shadow to another light. And thus your freedom, when it loses its fetters, becomes itself the fetter of a greater freedom. one of my favorite sort of poetic essays that he's written. You know, that it starts within you, which I know is a very Buddhist concept, but I mean, I actually think that it's a concept that even you know, Jesus brings up, and that all of the great sort of ancient ones talk about. You know, when you begin to look at the mystics, it begins within, right? Zach, what are you thinking over there?
I was wondering, because I'm just looking at the time, and I'm wondering what type of time we might have for reading other poems.
I think we can go over, however, I think we can go over time. I think we sort of loosely said an hour, but I mean, that's loose. So go as you like, I'm fine.
Okay, well, I guess what I'd like to do is end by reading a poem from my favorite book that came out in 2019. The book is Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminsky. And the poem, which I'll be reading off the Poetry Foundation website, is called We Lived Happily During the War.
You're up.
We lived happily during the war. And when they bombed other people's houses, we protested, but not enough. We opposed them, but not enough. I was in my bed, around my bed, America was falling, invisible house by invisible house, invisible house. I took a chair outside and watched the sun. In the 6th month of a disastrous reign in the house of money, in the street of money, in the city of money, in the country of money, our great country of money, we, forgive us, lived happily during the war. And that is, again, Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminsky.
Did you want to read the next one, or did you want to keep going?
That's it for me.
Okay. Sid, how
So,
about you?
yeah, I'm like I said earlier, I wanted to read that portion of my thesis because I wanted to read Elm, and so I'm going to read that now. This is by Sylvia Plath. For Ruth Fainlight. I know the bottom, she says. I know it with my great tap root. It is what you fear. I do not fear it. I have been there. Is it the sea you hear in me, its dissatisfactions, or the voice of nothing? That was your madness? Love is a shadow, how you lie and cry after it. Listen, these are its hooves, it has gone off, like a horse. All night I shall gallop thus impetuously, till your head is a stone, your pillow a little turf, echoing, echoing. Or shall I bring you the sound of poisons? This is rain now, this big hush, and this is the fruit of it, tin white, like arsenic. I have suffered the atrocity of sunsets, scorched to the root, my red filaments burn and stand, a hand of wires. Now I break up in pieces that fly about like clubs. A wind of such violence will tolerate no bystanding. I must shriek. The moon also is merciless. She would drag me cruelly, being barren. Her radiance scathes me, or perhaps I have caught her. I let her go, diminished and flat, as after radical surgery, how your bad dreams possess and endow me. And I am inhabited by a cry. Nightly it flaps out, looking with its hooks for something to love. I am terrified by this dark thing that sleeps in me. All day I feel its soft, feathery turnings, its malignity. Clouds pass and disperse. Are those the faces of love, those pale irretrievables? Is it for such I agitate my heart? I am incapable of more knowledge. What is this face so murderous in its strangle of branches? Its snaky acid's kiss, it petrifies the will. These are the isolate, slow faults that kill, that kill, that kill.
Oh,
right.
thank you.
You read that well.
So here's another one. It's by Kabir, the famous Indian mystic poet, called "There Is No River." I said to the wanting creature inside me, "What is the river you cross? There are no travelers on the river road, and no road. Do you see anyone moving about on that bank or nesting? There is no river at all, and no boat, and no boatman. There is no tow rope either, and no one to pull it. There is no ground, no sky, no time, no bank, no ford, and there is no body and no mind. Do you believe there is some place that will make the soul less thirsty? In that great absence, you find nothing. Be strong then, and enter into your own body. There you have a solid place to your feet. Think about it carefully. Don't go off somewhere else. Kabir says this: just throw away all thoughts of imaginary things and stand firm in that which you are.
I love that. That's fantastic. What does a poem like that make you like? What does it do when you read something like that for you?
I mean, like, honestly, it's different each time. Last time I read it, like the first bit, I was just a bit like, okay, this is a bit vague. But it's always that sort of final stanza that I love where it just says, be stronger and enter in body. There you have a solid place for your feet, you know? And I think it's sort of that amazing turn because it's just kind of this vague stuff like there's no and nothing, there's no nothing. And then it's like, boom, stand firm, you know, there's nothing. And it's that kind of the way it holds the sort of paradox. It holds the paradox of like there is something that's super valuable and is identified and is a person, but at the same time there is ultimately sort of emptiness, you know. So it's that paradox that I find that it describes.
Amazing. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll read one of my own. Back to one of my own. I call this one "Called by Name," since we've had a little bit of a spiritual element to our space today. For when I was called by name, I struggled with the divine, the fire. I was burned into place. For this I am called by a name only given by the one who rules the heavens. Do you know my name? Do you remember me as you were meant to see for mine eyes through the flames? For it is by my name the wind carries me through the oxygen in the sky, covering it in the darkness, only to slip down to the soil and reveal the light. Softly land penetrating the ground, cultivating its ways, to rebirth that which is meant for this place. Hear me speak, because by my name you will know. Sit down and hear me now. What I must say, you must hear this as I rise, one fragment at a time. I formulate these words permeating the world, and if you cross the threshold before it is ready, you may burn. I know the sensation, its anguish, and its divine transformation grounded in the earth. I see the shadowed ones too. They lurk behind you, and I wait. Only a moment, they must hear this. Into the shadow's golden deceptive eyes, I say, you touch, I will cut. You mess with, I will hunt. You come near. Beware, oh beware of me. And to you, one of light, love, and joy, do not be dismayed. Here with me we are one, and by the name that brings life unto that which is dead, call out, lift up. My confidence grows as I step onto the mark of my place in a space, humbled before the divine. I rise, my mane tosses about, celebrating all that is just, for broken being redesigned. Do you know my name? I know yours. You have come to fight, but rest assured, you will endure before you will know your name. The way it comes takes over one's very being, consumes the senses, the nerve endings, sheds all that is not sacred, surrenders one to the silence, births holiness. Rage, rage, cry out and lament for your grief will help you find your sanctuary. And when you do, you must carry it with you too. Oh, then, darling, only then will you know your name as I do. And as I finish this, my paws disintegrate back into the particles to exist beyond the bounds of normal perception, to wistfully fellowship with the earth and edify all that is within. I am here, always here, sanctified in a space of knowing what is. For the ground begins to shake, radical root intertwined and connected between the universe's stars, lassoed together in an ancient place, an agent of change, existing among the strange. For I know my name says I am. Do you remember how untamed, how gone mad we were for joy among the swallows? There is nothing more wild than this. The one who called me by my new name touched my hip. Now I walk unbound, but with a limp. You see, this is the secret of the shift. One cannot come out without the reflection of what has happened. When the blaze thrashed about, tormenting to turn, then emergence bursting through. So as I wait, careful, watchful, I pace the space for which I was formed, patient until the next movement moves me. For when the divine calls my name, and I know it, so shall you. In you we are a force in the earth to be reckoned with, commanding it so, and bring all that we know to its knees, bare for all to see in unity. Yes, I know my name, for by it I bring forth this. The wisdom of old is before you, behind you, below you. Reach for it, it will not lie to you. It will force you to be present with this moment, to know it and love it. And truly, then it will grow. Know I am. Know this breath. It is yours and it is mine. So saith the one who gives life. To live and move, and have our being.
Hey, like I know we're gonna finish soon, but like I was just wondering if you guys would like answer a question.
Yeah, of course.
We could go around, right? Because I heard this on a podcast called Contemplify, and I asked this question of like some yogi man, and he was like, I would never answer that because like blah blah blah. But I think it's a good question anyway. So anyway, it's basically like if you were to teach a university course kind of on your personal history, yeah, what set texts would you choose for your students? So let's say you can have up to 3 and they can be any media you like. So I've already thought about this, so I'll go first and then you guys have a time to think, right? So mine would be that album, The Decline by NoFX, which is perhaps one of the greatest sort of like cries for justice I find, like in just that passion that's in that song. Because it's a punk song that's 18 minutes long. So there's a lot of passion in that. It would also probably be like that Bill Hicks show, the classic one, the classic Bill Hicks show, where he just tears apart sort of modern society in this amazing way. And then the solution to all that suffering, which is the Satipatthana Sutta, which is a Buddhist sutta, the Satipatthana Sutta. It's all mindfulness is based on that. So anyway, that's my 3. Ash, have you had a chance to think yet?
I like that you included music. And it would be so hard because there are several albums I feel like I would include in some of that to sort of teach or to examine. I definitely think that I would to sort of signify my life. Is that what you're saying? Like if I were to teach like a master class on sort of my background or something?
Yeah, kind of, you know, your history, your life, what has made this person, I suppose.
Right now, like this could change. I think it could change wherever I'm at in the process of my life. But right now, I do think one book that I would for sure use would be The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I read it my senior year in high school, and one of the most fascinating things about this is how it plays with the mind, because he suffered from a lot of PTSD. He was in Vietnam, and the book is sort of considered fiction, but it's not. I mean, it sort of wavers between fiction and nonfiction, because really it's just about him going into his mind and everything that plays out. And so it's how the mind works, how our capacity to think works. And I feel like I have a lot of connection with that. And I got into a lot of even like war correspondence stuff because of Vietnam. So a lot of stuff from around that, I think it would be big for me. I would couple it maybe with watching episodes of MASH, which I grew up watching in syndication. Album wise, gosh, that's so hard because I probably would choose music. I would probably choose, there's probably a lot of music I would choose. Anything from maybe the 60s and early 70s. And then I also believe, as far as I think maybe some of my own evolution and some of my understanding of the world, I might actually choose The Letter from Birmingham Jail by Martin Luther King Jr. He writes it in the style of Paul, like the biblical writer Paul, and he writes it to white Christians. And it's this really profound letter that really targets like his angst and how much I had a love and appreciation for that, and how much that influenced me as far as the way that I thought, the way that I looked at, equality, and the way that I look at of honoring each other, because he's basically asking people to honor him and his experience and what he's been through, and this sort of balance of sort of justice, in the world. And I think justice is a theme with me. I had someone tell me that they had known me for most of my life, and she had said, since you were younger, you've always had this part of you that sort of wants to right the wrong, that wants to correct something within the system, within the self. And I think those are themes that sort of bleed through my work now. And so I think maybe I would use that as sort of a starting point. So yeah, maybe those are some ideas that could change in another setting, but that's what I might look at right now.
Cool, thanks. Zach?
Okay, I'll bite. I'll try. I could only come up with 2 books. La Maladie de la Mort by Marguerite Duras, for love, for a very particular kind of love. Les Chants de Malheur by the Count of Lautremont, for psychosis and spiritual journey, and a brick of cocaine.
Sorry, a whole brick.
Whole brick.
Wow, man, you are not coming down for a long time. It's just enough coke to learn French and read all the originals in French, right?
Just enough.
Thanks. Sydney?
Yeah, this is hard. So I went with 2 films and a book. The book Matter and Desire by Andres Weber, I read a few years ago, and it is kind of, the subtitle is An Erotic Ecology, and I think that really helped me rethink my own spirituality after I left the church, and so that's had really big impact on me. And then the 2 films, Sofia Coppola's The Virgin Suicides from '99, it has kind of been with me since I was a teenager, and I just think about it all the time because I think there's something about it, and it's like mystery and the way it handles like a woman's psyche that is fascinating. And then Selena, I don't know how to say her name, Siama maybe, Water Lilies, just for its understanding of like queer adolescence and what that means. So those would be my 3.
I think that's brilliant. I love that. Well, for all of you who are joining us live by YouTube, I want to say thank you, for joining us, for watching us. It's been a really beautiful hour, and I think that, it's something that we'll probably do again, maybe in another format. I really enjoyed listening to the original poems and even a couple of the other ones that sort of bled through, and I think that it definitely examines our journeys. And so if you guys, again, want to check out work that we're regularly doing, check out the description box. We have links for each one of us. And if you want to donate to this effort, There is a PayPal link as well that you can donate to, that'll help us out. And share this with your friends. Even though the hour is over, the video will still be up. And so you should be able to share it on your, if you like what you heard, share it on your Facebooks and your social media. I know that we had a lot of fun. And so, yeah, so we'll also put the recommendations, like some of the things that we've talked about today, as far as people that we've been inspired by, or books or albums. We'll make a list as well in the description box, so you guys can check those out on your own, and maybe listen to the music or read the books or the references that we pulled up, or watch the films. Yeah, just love it very, very much. So to those of you on YouTube, thank you for joining us, and we will see you again.